Hi, I'm Gene Champagne from Hamilton, Ontario. I play drums for Teenage Head currently, and I was the drummer, still am the drummer for the Killjoys. And I play guitar for my own band, the Unteens. My main influences growing up would be, well, first off, my mother and my father. My house was always full of music, a lot of country music. And my dad played guitar as well, and I would listen to him downstairs in the rec room, and he'd be playing, some song in French or something, and I'd listen to that all the time. And of course, the radio. It was always CKOC on, and the AM radio in the house. And I played some sports when I was young, but that wasn't my thing. That was going nowhere fast. I was a little guy, and an unlikely thing people probably don't know is what got me into music and drums would be watching the Partridge Family. Chris Partridge, I remember watching him and the Blue Sparkle Kit. I mean, that just wowed me. Here's this kid playing this Blue Sparkle Kit, and I'm like, oh my God, that's for me. And so I told my mom, I said, I think I want to play drums, and instantly she put me into lessons right away, and off we went. So I went to downtown Hamilton, and I went to a conservatory of music, and I think my drum teacher was Mrs. Thurston. And I walked into the door, and there was a sparkle red kit. It wasn't blue, but it was sparkle red, so it was pretty exciting for me. And I went home, and I had a drum pad. I didn't have a drum kit yet, and was working away on a drum pad. And then my mom just bought me a cheap drum set. I think my first kit was a Raven, of all drums. And she just let me do whatever I want. I mean, my drums were in her bedroom, so she just let me play whenever I want, and so I really have to thank her for that, and my father. And other inspirations would be, believe it or not, Hamilton bands. Growing up, my favorite bands in the world were local. They were rock stars to me. Teenage Head, they were one of the ones. Forgotten Rebels, the Shakers. These were all my favorite bands. I had all their records, and they were rock stars to me when I was a kid growing up. So I remember early on, before I could drive, my mom going downtown or something, or taking me on errands, and I'd be in the back seat. And I remember vividly songs like Let's Shake and Something on My Mind come on CKOC in the car. And I really didn't know that they were punk or anything at that time. I just knew what I liked. I remember hearing it and thinking, I really like that. Them, and I think Switchin' to Glide was on at that time. And I instantly went to that. That's the stuff that popped out to me and would get my attention. So they were huge influences on me. And of course, the Ramones. You'll hear me speak about them a lot because I gravitated to those guys with their sound, and Teenage Head. So Teenage Head and the Ramones are probably my top two in my life. And yeah, we could talk about them all day. So what got me into punk music? Believe it or not, it probably came from a funnier place. Growing up, there was always music in our house. There was, and the radio was always on, CKOC, which was a lot of, lighter music and whatnot. And when I was really young, I always got records like the Goofy Greats, the K-Tel records, a lot of bubblegum of all things. And I used to love all the bubblegum melodies and whatnot. And like everybody else, I had a brother that had a pretty extensive record collection, and I would listen to a lot of this stuff. And of course, he had Rocket to Russia. And like so many other people, I picked up Rocket to Russia, and I was like, okay, and I put it on. And the guitars were ferocious, and they had this bubblegum sensitivity, or sensibility, sorry. And it was the perfect marriage of the two, and then I just found my way. They were playing so simple and so loud, and it was the perfect marriage, and I was on my way at that point. So I sort of come from the melodic side of punk, and I can appreciate the bands like the Undertones, and another island pick that I'd probably have is like the Romantics, who at that time were like more of a pop band, but because there was like punk new wave going on, I really loved them too, because the drums at that point were just huge, and it was one of the best Sonic records I think I ever heard at that time. Yeah, the melodies, the boys, for example, just so much of that stuff. The Sex Pistols, another one. Man, when I heard that record, the melodies and the guitars again, just explosive, and I found my thing. I took off from there. My first concert is probably going to seem like an odd one to many, but I was really young. I'm going to guess probably 7 years old, I'm thinking. And it was actually Loretta Lynn, Ernest Tubb, and it was at the Hamilton Place downtown. And I still remember it, even though I was really young. Loretta Lynn was playing, coal miner's daughter. And I just remembered Crystal Gale was there too, the long hair. She came out. I don't know if she was an opener or if she was just a guest that came out. And then Ernest Tubb was there as well. And I even met Ernest Tubb after the show. He was out front, I think near the merch area, and my mom wanted to go get something signed, and he took time to talk to me, and I do recall that, so that was pretty interesting. My first punk show, however, is I really had to rack my brain on that, because when I was coming up, playing and stuff, I thought we were all kind of punk because we were really scrappy. So it could have been any show. But when I think about it, I would have to say it was Teenage Head at the Rock Pile, and I had to rack my brain on this. But I think I was even underage when I got in there, and you have to remember, Teenage Head was this huge band to me. These guys were rock stars, and I couldn't believe that they lived in Hamilton, because I grew up in Stony Creek, and when you're that young and you don't have transportation, that seemed like Hamilton at that time seemed like Hollywood to me. These guys live close to me. I couldn't believe it. I would see them in the paper. I remember seeing them on their simulcast on City TV, I believe, and they were playing the Rock Pile, and I can't remember who took me or how I got in. But it was certainly through the Some Kind of Fun record, because Nick was still playing drums for them at that time. So I remember coming in. Sylvain was on that bill. Dave Rave was playing. I think they brought up Rick from the Shakers. I think I remember that. I think I was a bit drunk too. But I remember that show specifically. That had to be my first one. I was just in awe that I got there. And I'd say another first would maybe be the Ramones, and this is probably my most memorable show. My first probably real punk band. I consider Teenage Head more rock and roll these days for myself, but Ramones were probably my first real punk band, and it was at Bannister's, and that was the most amazing concert I've ever seen. I mean, like, hair-raising. They were my favorite band. I couldn't believe they were in town in a club, this small club, Bannister's. And I remember it just being so jammed, and I was on the balcony right in front of Joey. Like, I could have reached out and touched him, and I remember people jumping off the railings. And I remember Teenage Head was on that bill, and they were opening. So, wow, I can't believe all my favorite people that inspired me my whole life were in this one room right here. I couldn't believe it. And I remember another thing from that show, Johnny, he was just this angry, pissed off guy. Someone threw something, he was just playing and staring just angrily, and oh man, I loved it. And such an amazing show. I could go on forever. After the show, I remember leaving, and we went out the back door, and there were the Ramones. They were sitting in the touring van, and they didn't want to be noticed, but they were just sitting ready to drive back to New York like this. Oh, chilling. I loved it. Funny story, now that I'm playing with Teenage Head, we played at the Phoenix, and this was a few years back, and I think it was for an award show or something we were doing, and we were up in the dressing room, and Steve had some stuff for Gordy, and they were, going through some things, and Gordy pulls out from his guitar case the set list, so I'm looking at it. It's the set list from that show. It's the Ramones set list that Gordy had in his guitar case. What are the chances of that? So what a full circle thing for me that was. Just incredible, an incredible moment. Some of the favorite shows that I've seen. I'm trying to think about that. I've told the story about the Teenage Head show, my first show with the Ramones, and how that all came to life. Definitely number one. Some other memorable shows that I really loved was, oddly enough, when Dookie was coming out with Green Day, he came to Toronto, and I think they were coming to Toronto, and we were just getting signed to the Killjoys to Warner, and they were on part of the Warner label, and I was just joking, saying, I'm not signed until I get tickets for the Toronto show. Well, anyway, I got tickets regardless, but I ended up going to that, and I remember getting I wasn't on the floors, I was up in the seats, and Green Day came out, and the place erupted. The entire seats came down on the floor, and I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? This is crazy. I didn't go down to the floor. But that show was intense, and I just loved it. I remember that one a lot. A lot of the Green Day shows were really memorable to me. I was fortunate enough to tour with them, with the Killjoys, when we did the Edgefest stuff. So there was the Foo Fighters and Green Day were on that tour. So I remember when those guys were on, well, obviously I wanted to go see them. So Green Day was outstanding. They always did some sort of shticky thing, which was really funny and just eye-opening. And Trey Cool used to burn the drum kit every show, and what they didn't realize is it was the same drum kit that he was lighting on fire, so he would put, the lighter fluid on everything, mainly the cymbals. Of course, it would drip down a little bit, and he would light it, and from the audience, it would be this huge spectacle, and they'd put it down, and then I would look backstage, and there's the kit, and it was all, it was burned up, and he charred, but he still used it the entire tour. That was really memorable, and the Foo Fighters, what I remember from that tour too, is, this really sticks in my head, is before they came out, they did some tremolo noise on the guitar, and it was absolutely enormous coming through the speakers, and it would pan back and forth, and it would just give you goosebumps. I remember that. Other shows would be some shows that I saw at the Horseshoe. There would be, when I was touring, I used to listen to bands like the Muffs, for example. I was a huge fan of the Muffs, and it wasn't until way later they came to the Horseshoe, and I was crammed right up at the front, me and my bass player, Shelley. We were right at the front of the stage, just in awe. I was like, oh, there's Kim Shi-tuk. Oh my God, she's screaming. That was amazing to us. Just incredible. I saw Red Cross there too. It took me forever to see Red Cross. I was a huge fan of them when Phase Shifter came out. And I remember when we were touring, they were in Canada, and we seemed to just keep missing each other. There was posters everywhere. We were kind of tailing each other, and I never did get to see them. I finally got to see them, and I remember that being one of the loudest shows I've ever seen. I love loud, but I actually had to go to the back of the room. It was incredible. That was really good. I liked Alice Cooper growing up. I was fortunate enough to do a few shows with Alice Cooper and see what it's actually all about. And I was touring with Anvil at that time, doing some work with them, and they had some shows. So, wow, Alice Cooper, what a showman. Just to see all of that and actually get to meet him after the fact took it to a whole new level, because he's such a personable guy. That made that show really memorable for me. So I've been fortunate enough to see a lot of good stuff. So the craziest thing that ever happened at a show, well, it's probably going to be the craziest thing that ever happened in a day. Probably the most volatile day I've ever seen. I was touring with the Killjoys, and we were doing a Western tour, and one of the stops was in Winnipeg, and we were playing with the Posies that night. And so we rolled into town, and we went to the promoters, because we were probably at that time going to collect food buyouts or whatever it was we were doing. Usually our road manager just goes in, but we all decided to go in at that time. Well, we went into the kitchen of whatever place it was that we were meeting, which was maybe a back of a bar or a restaurant, I don't recall. So we were in there talking to him, trying to get all our stuff together, and some kid comes in to talk to the promoter, the club owner, I think. And he comes in, there was some sort of altercation, a lot of yelling. Next thing I know, he's got this kid's face over the chip fryer. And we're just like, oh, what the fuck moment, what do we do here? We were just in shock that this kid's gonna get his face burnt in a chip fryer. He lets the kid go, shakes him, he must have owed him money for something, who knows. Ends up throwing him out. We're trying to regroup so we can capture our money for our buyouts and whatnot. And I was like, okay, well, let's leave. So we ended up going to the venue at that time. And we're loading in at the venue, and our road manager's up in the front corridor. And the same day, all of a sudden, some guy comes in like a twister, just comes rolling in. Who wants a piece of me? And and my road manager's like, oh, what the fuck moment. Next thing we know, this guy's getting carted out into the street. It was just some street dude. And the same day, okay, well, now we're rolling into showtime. The place is just packed. And there's some adrenaline that night, that's for sure. There was kids that just wanted to be happy and were up on stage, but the you know, as usual, the bouncers are very aggressive. So some kids are just getting on stage to do stuff, and they're just getting pummeled by the bouncers and thrown off stage. And we're like, come on, guys, what the hell is going on? And we got through. It was an okay show, but we didn't like how violent it really was. And to top it off, same day, same show, someone was either stabbed or robbed and cut by knife point in the bathrooms at that same venue. So this is one day I will never forget. My past and current bands. I probably started when I was 11 in our first original band. I played with Mike Treblecock, who was later with me in the Killjoys. That was our band. But that was our very, very first band. I was about 11 years old, and we played all original music because we really sucked at trying to copy anything. And we did a few shows. I remember doing a small festival with Tom Wilson and Jason Avery at that time, and they were really young in Hamilton. The thing that was funny about that first band is we played another show, and I recall someone saying, "You guys sound like the Yardbirds," and we kind of thought that was pretty cool. After that, I played in a band in high school called the Monday Nuns, which was spelt with a U, Monday Nuns, and we covered all the bands that I loved. We did Forgotten Rebel stuff, loved the Rebels, covered some Teenage Head stuff, did a little bit of Ramones, and we wrote our own stuff. They were the only covers that we did. That later morphed into the Monday Nuns with an O when Mike Treblecock sort of came into the fold and played in that band, and Dave departed. Dave, the singer, Dave Pomfret. The Monday Nuns, then we did some shows around Hamilton. That's sort of where we cut our teeth. And then the Monday Nuns became the Killjoys, and we were originally a four-piece. And that we played around for a little while, and we were going to decide to make a CD. And I remember we sort of turned into a three-piece. That was myself, Mike Treblecock, and Shelley Woods. And I'm going to say that was probably about 1993. And I really remember that specifically because I just kind of felt like someone flicked this huge switch. I remember finally becoming a real band. We put some money together and we recorded our first record, which was Starry. And we recorded that on John Street at Soho Studios, which was an 8-track recording studio with Tim Hevesy above a shoe store. And I remember we had to actually wait for the guy downstairs to stop nailing shoes so that we could do some takes. And one of the songs on that was Someplace, where you hear a bus taking off, and that was the mic out the window, and that was the John Street bus leaving. You could hear all that. So that was that's how that went. So I did the Killjoys from 93 till maybe 99, 98, I think, when we didn't break up, we didn't disband, we didn't do anything. We just had enough of touring and playing, and I think we were tired of management. We were just let down by the last record that we did, and we did a tour, and after that we just got out of the van and said, okay, see you later. Never called each other to do stuff or to play. We just kind of let it sit idle. At that point, I didn't know what to do with myself. I still wanted to play musically. I didn't know what to do, so I did play some guitar, and I started writing, and I put a band together called Junior Achiever, which sort of had some legs. We wrote it. We wrote the record. How did this work? We wrote the record. It was MySpace at that time. I know I'm aging myself when I say that. But we ended up selling the songs to some television. We sold it to DeGrasse. In fact, they bought most of the music at that time. We didn't have a CD really yet. We were just kind of in the early stages. So we sold that. That ended up funding making the record. What kind of sucked about it is we were behind the times a little bit because of MySpace. We we were on television. The music was certainly, and people were always saying, you know, what on MySpace we'd get all these reactions from all over the world because you could see where it would air, because MySpace would allow you to see where people were from, and they would say, okay, when are you coming to California? When are you coming to California? We'd have a huge thing there. You'd see New Jersey, you'd see all these different places. We didn't even have a record out yet. It was just songs on television. But the money from that funded actually putting the record together. Well, because of MySpace and the way it was able to cross over internationally, there was a label in Japan that wanted to pick it up, Trust Records. So we put a deal out with Trust Records, and they put it out in Japan. Well, as we were mastering for the Japanese release, we get another call while we were in the studio. They said, do you want to come to Japan and open up for a bigger band there? And we're like, well, yeah, we want to do that. Maybe we can do a swap thing. So my first experience traveling overseas to Japan was going over and playing for a band called Shakalabits, which was sort of like a Japanese version of No Doubt. They were really ska based. They were around for a long time and they were pretty big. You know, so my first show in Japan was, you know, a 2,000 seater, playing guitar, singing, and it's just a different culture over there. And I remember, you know, there was kids waiting for us to show up, and that was sort of mind-blowing after having an experience from the Killjoys. And here's my own thing, the audience interaction, where we used to run an opening tape which would be like yummy, 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 I got love in my tummy, and you know, the kids were screaming and clapping their hands over it, and then all of a sudden we'd play into Yummy Yummy, and that's how we opened up the set. But the audience was so incredible that, you know, you could stop and tell them to clap a certain way and they just got it. You know, over here people can't even count on 2 and 4, but they would do things so intricate, like they would just do it. So that was mind-blowing. And then we brought that band over to Canada, which was underwhelming to say the least, because, you know, we didn't have the fan base in Canada like we did over there, and or their fan base. They were huge, so we were very fortunate in that we did the one side of Japan with those guys playing huge shows, and then we come down the other side doing our own club shows, which was another unique thing for us, because the way it just works over there. Their bar is way smaller because they don't drink. They actually pay money to go see the bands, and all the gear is there, and you can pick whatever you want to use to play. Just fantastic. And I remember getting on trains, and that's how we toured. You know, some of our gear would go in a truck, and we'd meet it, and we'd be crammed in a van or on the Shinkansen train going across. That's how we toured. It was crazy. Coming back to Canada again, it was a little underwhelming in that, you know, we had to put together shows, and we didn't want to let our counterparts down because they come from such big things, but I think they were just happy to leave the country. And when we promoted the shows, we would really hit up universities or campuses. For example, Hamilton, there was a campus where we knew there were a lot of Japanese people that would go there, so they would know who they were, and luckily those people wanted to come out and see them, and so they were greeted by fans from their own country, which was really, really helpful. So that was my Junior Achiever mission. And then this isn't really a band thing, but I got out of music for a while because I started a tour bus company where I was transporting rock and roll bands all over North America in buses. But I really, really missed playing. I was gone for about 5 years straight. I really missed playing. I didn't want to be on the road. My mom got ill for a bit, and I just remember being in Montana thinking, what happens if something happens to my mom and I'm stuck out here and this tour still has to go? I just sort of put it together. I gotta get out of this. I just want to play. I came home and just started picking up some bands here and there, playing drums again, because this ain't Hollywood, and there was some jam nights, and I'd go and I'd play with some different people. I played with Lou Molinaro. He put a band together, Tung Fu, played some drums for that. And then Gordy. Gordy played in Tung Fu, and that's how we sort of reconnected, because I knew him back in the 90s with the Killjoys. And he wanted to do some recording, so I had him come over to my house and we just started recording some, probably what would be his early Teenage Head demos for something we may do in the future. I don't know, but we started doing that and formed the Gord Lewis Band, which was Dave Rave, myself, and Paul Cameron, who played bass. Steve was out of the picture at that time, and we were just doing it for the love of playing and trying to get Gordy playing again. He was very, very not in a good place at that point, and I thought I was being helpful trying to get him out of that, you know. So we did that, and then Teenage Head came up next. I remember poor Jack went through his episode where he was sick, and he couldn't do a festival. So Gordy asked me, phoned me, said, "Do you want to play a festival with Teenage Head?" And I was like, "Oh my God, it's only a couple days away. It's a festival, but yeah, I should know this stuff. I'm a huge fan. I should know it all. But okay, let's go. There's not going to be much rehearsal." And we played the show, and it was just a huge connection, and it just went great. And I remember being stunned at that point. I couldn't believe I'm playing a Teenage Head. I remember playing these songs that I grew up listening to, and I looked to my right, there's Steve, there's Gord, and I'm thinking, this is what Nick got to see all these years. This is incredible, and just forged a great relationship with those guys, and here I am still playing with them today. When things got quiet, I still had to have a guitar outlet. You know, I play drums all the time, so I started playing again and writing my own stuff with the Unteens. The Unteens was supposed to be a solo project for myself, where I played everything, and it was going to come out that way. But it was going to come out as Gene Champagne, but I thought, well, you know, I want to play some of these songs live, but I'm going to need a band. That's where I put together John Connolly on bass, Dan Caselli on drums from the Rebels, and Neen Yokohama from Trash Gallery. We started playing, and they said, well, why don't we just make this a record, re-record it? And that's exactly what we did. I redid all of that music with those guys and put it out as the Unteens. It still needs to see the light of day. I did a single, and I think it still might happen. We may still put it out, and I still want to do a solo thing. I think I actually want to do just a whole bunch of stuff where it's just me playing, and whether it be demos or whatever it is, and just put it out there just so I can leave my mark on the world. The thing I like most about being a musician would be in the band aspect. There's the family camaraderie, and the travel and meeting people that you get to do. There's something to be said for that. You know, the family aspect is huge. You know, those bandmates are often, you'll hear this probably by any band, you know, they're your brothers, and you'll defend them to anything. You know, you can, you know, I can call him an asshole, but you can't call him an asshole, sort of camaraderie. And the travel, definitely. And I think also being able to release that energy that you have and that art, and also be just the high that you can get from playing. You know, Gordon and I have talked about after show blues. You know, the day later you're coming down from it, and it's just such a great feeling. And I think also being able to leave a mark. I mean, I don't have any kids, but if I can leave something tangible for somebody to listen to, or if I've left an impression with a person, that is absolutely huge to me. What I dislike about being a musician sometimes is the work, probably more so these days than anything, is the amount of work that you have to put into it. It just doesn't come easy. When I was coming up, sort of in the 90s, it was so much easier. When we were younger, you have so many friends that you could invite out to shows. You would work your ass off postering and doing stuff, but there was also a scene. There was, you know, you could go to any bar at any time, and it was just rammed with people. Well, as you get old, and the times have changed, that just isn't there anymore. So for a young band, I feel kind of bad for them in a way that there's so much more work that you have to do to get people to come out, and it's non-stop, and it really takes away from the art side of things that you want to do. I say I'd probably hate that the most. And I also don't like, you know, I'd have to say to a lot of young bands is really enjoy it while you can, because unfortunately what we do is so ageist. You know, it's hard. So if you want to start a band and you're 50 years old, probably in a good chance you're only going to get a few people out at your shows. If you're fortunate enough to have some sort of history and be able to relive those moments and get people out for the nostalgia side, that's awesome. But always keep your options open. And I do this today. I'm looking to play on other people's stuff. I'm looking to always find another way to be able to keep my art open and maybe be heard. But that's the hardest part, I think. My favorite food, well, by the look of me, it'd probably be sugar, salt, butter, and fats. But no, my real favorite food would probably be, I'm more like a steak and potato kind of guy. If I'm going to celebrate something, it's often with a nice steak and a potato, or surf and turf, that kind of a thing. That's my go-to. That's a celebratory thing. My most useless talent. I had to think about this for a minute, but I can draw Fred Flintstone pretty fast, and I'll do it because they want me to do it. That's it.